Yeah, because
you can join Kevin over there.
We're walking around the site, you're asking questions, and I can see you're actually engaged. Like, why do you do this and why do you do that? What's that thing up
so
there?
He gets the exact opposite from you.
AJ.
Welcome back to the TED Talks YouTube channel. So if you haven't done a development before, maybe you've done one, maybe you're looking at it, you're interested, we are going to give you some homework, some tips, some lessons, some experience. I say we, they are, I'm just going to ask the questions, about your first development. So, right, I've done BuyToLets, maybe I've done HMOs, maybe I've done stuff that's already built. I want to do a development. Where do I start?
So, I guess, as I mentioned on the podcast that we did a while ago, I came from a fairly untraditional background. I was in sales and software and everything else, but I knew I wanted to get into development. So the way in for me, and I guess the softer landing, was not going straight into a big construction project straight away, but it was actually to focus on what all developments really rely on, which is land, and to become more of an expert in land and planning specifically. And that's why, also when I mentioned on the podcast, I found a specific mentor. I found Paul Higgs at the time, who was, probably just about the best guy you could have found for anything to do with land and planning and development. So in doing that, I sort of focused on the bit that was more within my control and that sort of suited the resources that I had at the time, which was, finding land, trying to add value to that land through the planning process. And obviously with planning, certainly in the early phases, there are consultants and there are architects and people in the industry. So if you're able to sort of organise that and be able to fund it, at least to that degree, that gives you, some degree of stepping stone towards development. And I think once you can start to create margin in planning, that money there, that capital, allows you to do the kind of things that I've done here. So obviously I've now partnered with Kevin, and as a business, I focus on creating margin over here so that we can then go and build developments, within Kevin's organisation with lower risk. And we've mentioned that. So that was the way that I went through it.
Okay.
It wasn't this, I have done some personal, like title split projects in property and things like that. So I do know that, but I would honestly say that there is a gulf of difference between sort of, existing buildings, refurbishments and splits and things like that, and what we're kind of doing on the development front. It's a totally different mindset. I'd actually say it's a totally different business mindset entirely, in order to be successful on this side. So
I think for me, I've come from a different background from AJ. I wasn't selling software, that's for sure. I was down a trench, getting covered in mud, building walls. But I built my way up from the bottom. So I started as a bricklayer, then I run a design and build company for sort of like 30 years. I've been involved in hundreds of projects over the years, but not doing the development all for myself. So how did I get into development? So it is a jump from just doing building to doing development. I think I understood buildings, and I think that's something that people, you want to be a bit passionate about it. You want to try and understand a building. So AJ's not as excited about the buildings as I am, but he's very excited about land and planning, right? So he's passionate about that, and so our passion kind of ignites together in that space. But you want to be interested in building. I think look at what's going on buildings, so try and understand a little bit. Talk to as many people as possible, try and understand it. Definitely, I wouldn't go in and do a big project like this. I think we could have really tripped over if I didn't have the amount of experience that I've got. It's been a real challenge for us. Off the back of that, we really motor forward as well. I would start on smaller projects. I think the first one I did for myself, I actually built a house for someone, or two houses, and he was an investor. And I said, look, if I find something, do you want a JV with me? And he was like, oh, okay. So I was like, good. So I found something, and then we started, and we built a first house together, and kind of built up like that. So I would definitely start with something small. One house, a house on the side of a house is really good. And if you do something like that, be interested in it. Talk to builders. remember what I've said about the value starts before you get there. It's really cheap to spend some time doing the design, to spend some time understanding the design, to spend some time asking why. Why do we do it like that? Is there another way we can do it? Like really understand the different ways, and you can really increase your value there. In terms of books and stuff to learn from, there's really a dearth. I mean, shout out to Paul Higgs, because he's been saying for years he's going to do one. And Paul, if you're listening, we need that book, right? Everyone needs your book.
Amazon is empty. I've looked. There's some 50 quid ones, but yeah.
I'll tell you, there's the best book that I've read, I think, on development. It's not directly on development, but by Mark Stokes. It's a commercial conversion.
Yeah.
And that's really good.
I bought that actually. Yeah.
It's a really good book. So shout out to Mark as well, because he's put it together really well. It's really clear thinking. He's worked on some really large developments. And it really gives you a framework of kind of how to set things up. And I think if you follow that, it's not so much about finding deals, but if you follow that process through the project, that would really help you out, give you an understanding of the landscape you're entering into. But certainly I wouldn't try and take on something really big. Sort of dip your toe in first, do something small, and then look for bigger projects.
I think the interest part is really interesting, because even in BuyToLets, HMOs, I see people who aren't interested in the construction of it, and I notice things that, say, someone who is interested would do, even if it's the difference between using moisture boards or hard lacquer boards. I'm passionate about boards, man. I love it.
You are, because
you can join Kevin over there.
You're walking around the site, you're asking questions. I can see you're actually engaged. Why do you do this and why do you do that? What's that thing up there?
He doesn't get. He gets the exact opposite from me.
AJ just blanks out.
I'm interested in the deal up front, the commercials. He builds it.
I love construction, honestly.
I like selling it at the end.
I'd lay bricks with you, honestly, experience. But you notice though that people who are interested, they do better, because they're actually just like, you do better at planning, you do better at building. And so let's say I've got an area, right, that I live in and I want to invest around here, one of the suburbs of London. How do I know where the council want to build? Where do I know where maybe there's a bit of a push to build?
So, I mean, that's a huge question, and it always is when it comes to planning, because I guess what you're asking is what are you looking for?
Yeah, are there any clues?
Well, there's clues everywhere. So the first thing is the policies, right? So you've got the policies, you've got the local plan policies, which I think it probably scares most people off thinking about having to trawl through a council.
261 pages. I just read it like
2
days ago. Yeah, we could read it now, but it's really fun.
And we've got and the other thing is you don't also know which ones you're supposed to be leaving, and you've got supplementary documents, and you've got updates, and it's an absolute minefield, and that's why planning consultants are kind of there. But fundamentally there are, it does take a while. I mean, we've been doing this for 5 years, and in those sort of 5-6 years we've learned different policies that adhere to a certain area. So it's worth first fixating on your area, because that's crucial, as it is with lots of areas of properties. Pick an area that you think that you want to do this in, and then start to look at the kind of other developments that are going on in and around it. So sometimes reverse it. So sometimes that's useful. The other good thing about planning is obviously a lot of it is public information. So you are able to see the types of opportunities that you want to do and effectively reverse engineer those. So that's always something that's quite useful to do. And then I think really it absolutely depends on the amount of effort that you want to put in to make things work.
It takes relentless effort, doesn't it? And I think if either of us, and we have our friend who works with us as well, Andrew, if we were on our own, it would definitely be a lot harder, right? So you do drag each other along, because it just takes a relentless effort to keep going through. You've read, your local plan. That's brilliant. You've just got to really know that. You've got to read, other supplementary guidance. Really good thing as well, I think, is to look at other plan applications that are going through. So just keep checking the portal, what's gone through. Well, why has that gone through? Let's have a look at that.
And you can use Nimbus or Landed Site to do
go to committee meetings.
And they're online now.
We used to just go to committee meetings. Andrew and I used to just go and sit in the back, because they're public events.
Well, Zoom now, aren't they? So you can do it from home in your pyjamas.
That's a good point.
Make sure the camera's not on.
Well, Used to do that. Sit at the committee meeting, go and have a pint afterwards, and write up notes.
Research, yeah.
But completely, they
Hopefully
always ask
celebrate
us.
as well.
Yeah.
But they didn't. No, but they used to ask us like, so are you here to object? Are you here? No, we just said, well, we're actually just here to educate ourselves, and they were like very confused.
Yeah.
It was very bizarre.
Yeah.
That
It makes
people
sense
would do that, but
Yeah.
but why wouldn't you? I mean, that is the crux of the planning system.
It's free.
There in front of you.
Mm.
So yeah, that's a fairly golden tip that I hadn't.
That is a
thought
really
of.
good tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when we're looking at these plans and looking at developments, you said before, like this square meter build cost. Let's say I don't have that, or someone's given me a square meter build cost. I'm looking at a plot. We're kind of analysing it. How do I know what's going to cost to build?
Yeah, I mean, it is a real science, and I think it's very scary the way that people throw around square foot numbers all the time. It's it's £180 a square foot, £300 a square foot. But what's included in that pounds per square foot? What kind of house are you building? What kind of finish are you building? How long's the road? What kind of external services you've got? How much green area have you got? There's so much that goes into it. I think it's very dangerous. So how would you find out? It's experience, so it takes a long time to get there, or speak to someone who's got experience.
That's the easier way.
Reach out to people. I'm looking at doing this. I'd involve you if I get an opportunity. Do you want to have a look at it? And that's the way. Just go and ask. And you'll find a lot of people that will be. I'm often helping people. A lot of people will be happy to help you. But I think it's very dangerous to make presumptions on a number that you don't understand.
Yeah. Okay, so really networking is probably the best way for someone who's new. Ask someone, find out, look at people who post online, look at the deals they're posting if they're real, and then go from there.
Yeah, get engaged, ask questions, yeah.
And then on the end of that deal analysis, the resale value, there's no new builds in this area. Do you speak to agents? Do you look at sold comparables? Do you disregard agents? I use sold comparables purely. Yeah. What's your goal?
It's funny because this is a really good example, isn't it? Because there are actually no comparables in this area. Certainly not new builds. There's a few houses here and there, but it doesn't. So different people do things in different ways. We do like really thorough analysis on comps. We do indexing. So we take over a 3 or 4 year, because it's been an interesting. We can say, to say the least, it's been an interesting 4 or 5 years, right, in the market, particularly the last 3 years, and there's lots of different factors. So, taking the right range and indexing and then getting pounds per square foot and all the rest of it, but that only gives you one side. That's a very metric focused view of what something is worth. So you do need to. We have relationships not necessarily with just estate agents, but generally we tend to focus on new homes agents, right? Because they are specialists in that. They walk the people around these areas. They have a bigger catchment of clientele, and so we often get them not just to help us with the pounds, with the end values, but also with the design, because agents are really quite key in that. If they're experienced and they know what they're doing, they're not just after if it becomes very apparent very early on that all they're trying to do is get your signature for the, exactly. And but when you find a mature and experienced new homes agent, they can give you a huge amount of experience to back up your metric based, your empirical experience as well. And you do the other thing, you drive around, you it's important to know your area, and we have expanded our areas and moved to different areas. And it is funny because when you first go to a new area, you don't really have a clue. You really don't. You sort of take your previous area and then put it over there. And you hear a lot of southeast and London investors going up north and think, oh, that's cheap,
And people up north saying, I can't believe you're going to pay that.
So slightly less extreme than that, but you do need to, the agents are a good foothold for that. You just got to appreciate what their motivation is,
it's an art and a science, isn't it? So you do the science, you get your metrics, and then you speak to the agents, and then you get a flavour for it as well. But because sometimes the metrics, because when we got the valuation done for the plot, because as part of the financing, the bank wanted to get a valuation done. They valued it, I think it was about 5.1. Whereas we had it valued at 5.4. So their metrics were saying it was a lot lower, but we were really confident in our valuation because we'd done the homework, so we knew it was worth more. And because we had our planning game in the deal as well, it still totally worked for the bank. But we had it conservative at 5.4, and we come out just below 5.5. So we've done our homework really well. So it was really substantial to kind of sit on.
Definitely. I think banks, I don't know if it works like a development, but they just seem to undervalue things, protect themselves, just because why not? Let's just piss off developers for the fun, basically.
I think so.
And look, with like buying houses that are already made, BuyToLets, HMOs, you can kind of do a lot of it yourself. Not the work, but the design or there's not necessarily many regs or things like that. When it comes to developments, would you always outsource like the architects, the planning? Would you try and get as much done by the professionals whose job it is?
Totally, yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Over to Kevin for that one. Yeah.
So I have many hats, and then I have to keep distributing these hats to other people. But because I've sort of done design and build, I understand all these different roles as well. So we have an architect who works with us on all of our projects, a couple of them, but they're consultants, so they're not totally in-house, but they just work for us as we need them. But then they're reliable, they know what we're trying to build, they know what we're trying to achieve from planning, then they know what Kevin's going to put up with when it comes through from planning that's going to be kind of buildable. So that's really important. We've got a project manager we work with who works with our major house builders as well, because time is really important, so controlling time is absolutely critical. So that is a function all on itself, just controlling time. You can't just do a Gantt chart, which is like a project plan, and then put it in the cupboard and hope for the best. You've got to control it all the way through. Then we have a commercial director and a quantity surveyor. Quantity surveyor works on the projects. Commercial director works behind the scenes with me, controlling the numbers. So it's like the time and the money, and then you've got the site manager on site is controlling the quality. So project management is always about time, cost and quality. So then 3 distinct areas have to be controlled. Underneath that, then we've got loads of other people, bookkeepers, accountants, and obviously all this sort of stuff as well.
Cool.